This time I got a Sony DCRTRV110. This is the first of the Digital 8 cameras that Sony introduced in, I think it was 99? I think 99 or not. What year was it anyway? Same camera that I have has analog playback capabilities. This one has no picture. Let's check it out. First things first, I'm just going to plug it in and we'll observe what it's doing or what it's not doing. We'll try an analog tape. First, I want to see what type of symptom I get on the screen. It indicates it is switching to a high 8 tape, but we have no picture. Just a blank screen, a blue screen on both the monitor and on here. It's reading, it looks like it's reading the tape, but there is no picture. Now what if I try going into fast forward? I see snow. So we're not getting a signal off the tape. It could be a couple things. It could be clogged heads. That's always a possibility that the heads are just completely clogged, or another problem. First things first though, we're going to tear this down and just take a look at it. Make sure that, first of all, the heads aren't damaged, but if the fact that it's reading, the tape is moving, it's seeing something on it. So first I'll remove the tape cover, the door. Just giving the transport a quick inspection. Make sure nothing appears to be missing here. Everything looks to be intact. Okay, next I'm just going to pop the machine apart. I got to pull the cover off of this unit. I have the very same camera myself. It was my first Digital 8 camera, and it still works after all these years. Although this one looks to be in pretty good shape. Mine, the grip is, the rubber on the grip is deteriorating pretty bad, like most of them. One nice thing about this particular model is that it has AV outputs. You're not using that stupid proprietary cable that Sony came out with for the cameras that followed this one. And what I used to do with my TRV110 is I actually attached this to my EVW300 using the S-Video in and the audio in connectors, and used the camera section from my EVW300 to produce a broadcast quality picture, and then recorded it onto the Digital 8 format tape, because of course the tape format itself could easily record 500 lines of resolution, and the quality off of it was just superior to recording on high 8, which is what the EVW300 recorded on. So I had a little bracket built that would allow me to attach the camera right to the top. I attached it right to the handle of the broadcast camera. So I had to hit the pause button on here to record. I put it in VTR mode and just hit the record button, and then I could start and stop it with the pause button, and it worked great. I used that thing for quite a few years doing that. Used to use that along with JVC GYDV500 as my second camera. Well, actually, I used the Sony was camera 2, basically, onto Digital 8. This is the switch, by the way, on these cameras. If you want to make it work with night shot on during the day for using one of those like PF filters, you just disconnect the switch. You just unscrew this little tab and bend the switch down a bit so that when you put it in night shot it doesn't make contact, because that's what turns on the green background and opens up the iris. So without that being switched, the camera will operate in night shot mode without the infrared cut filter, and then you can use one of those infrared pass filters to get all the cool features of being able to see through things. Let's just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that, see through things. Undo this connector up here. You have to be really careful because these connectors will break without giving you any warning, because there's one hidden screw right here that has to come out in order to remove the side cover that we need to do. I want to check the connectors, and of course we can check the heads as well while I've got this off. Now this side cover should come off. There's one more connector right here that has to be undone, but the camera will operate, if I'm not mistaken, it will operate. I just have to put the side cover on it to operate it with the back off in the front here. Right, I just have to connect the side here because the switch on this one is right down here, right, which is connected through this. So I have to connect this one in order to turn the camera on while it's apart. But I want to get in, I want to check these edge connectors, because this is a very common problem on these ones, is these edge connectors go bad. So that's why I'm going in right here. We're going to start right where the most common fault on these cameras is these edge connectors. This is where the signals get passed from the heads and so forth to the board, and we just basically have to take them out and reseat them, and in most cases that's going to solve any problems that are caused by any oxidation on these connectors. You're really careful because these connectors will break if you're not very, very careful. Sometimes I like to insert a screwdriver underneath it just to give me something to pry it out with, because they'll tear if you're not careful. Just wiggle it back and put it back in place. Alright, let's see if this will fire up now and work. Before I put it all back together. Still got a lot of snow here. If I go to fast forward, I got a lot of snow. I'm going to just try cleaning the heads. It might be dirty heads. That might be where our fault is on this, is dirty heads. I'm just going to close that up so I can lay this flat. I'll hook it up to the monitor so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to do the little fingernail trick on the head here, because it could be completely clogged to the point where it won't come clean. I don't want to use cleaning tapes on it if I don't have to, because, well, they are abrasive. So you can see that the tape is playing. I'm going to try to get a shot of the monitor while I do this. Okay, so back side of the fingernail against the head to see if it'll come clean. For those wondering, no, this will not damage the heads. I'm using the back of my fingernail, not the edge, but the back of it.
A fingernail is just the right hardness that if the head is clogged, it will clean the clog without damaging the head, because the head itself is made out of metal. It's a lot harder than your fingernail. I learned this trick when I worked in broadcast, watching the engineers do this, especially if you're on the air, because you didn't have time. You couldn't rewind a tape and clean the head and wind it back out. That would take too long. So while they're on the air, if they had a head that clogged up, they'd put up a cut away for a second and tap the back of the head with their finger.
Really, really badly clogged, or it's worn out,
and go back on the air. I've used this on my own equipment for years. I even have a camera that I've got the top off of it so that I can do it on the fly when I'm transferring tapes, because these tapes are getting old. They clog the heads for no reason just while they're playing. So I have one that I've got the top permanently detached, and I can just open it up while it's playing and access the head. That's one of the newer Digital 8, the bottom feeder as I call it, because the tape goes in from the bottom and the head is up at the top, and I've got it exposed so that I can clean it on the fly, and I've been doing that for years. But this one here, it's not coming clean. A little more serious than that. I think we got a worn head on this one. We'll confirm that with the scope.
I can almost see a picture there when I put it in pause. I can almost see a picture there. I think the heads are... See, look. Well, I've got more than I did before. I've got a partial picture in pause. I think one of the heads might be worn out on this. Let's just see whether it'll come any better. Either that or the head is just so badly clogged. I get a sneaking suspicion that one of the heads is bad on the... I think both the heads are bad. Just the way it's... it's just... There's no signal there, or very, very little. And this is what we're getting if I put it in pause, for example. We're seeing part of an image. So I know that the circuitry is working because it's able to pull part of that image off there. And the thing is, as I've talked about before with 8mm equipment, is that the heads typically will go just like that. They'll be fine one day, and over the course of a 2-hour tape, all of a sudden they'll go from a perfect picture to that. They just keep putting out signal, putting out signal, putting out signal until they're just worn right down, and then they just quit. And I've had that happen on a couple of my own machines that I've been using for archiving. I'll start playing a tape and everything looks fine, and by the time I get to the end of the tape, it's like, where'd the picture go? I go back and look at the archive footage, and halfway through the tape, all of a sudden, it just, within the matter of a few minutes, just went from a great picture to nothing. And the heads were worn, and this may be what's wrong here. Yeah, it sure looks like the heads are worn. They're not broken. You can see the head chip. All the heads are there. Both recording heads and the flying erase head. That's the flying erase head there. The heads are not broken, right? You can see the head chips there, but the head chips are also worn right down. They're not protruding. When I put my finger over top of them, you should be able to feel the head protruding ever so slightly, and they're not. I don't feel anything. They are completely worn. You can also see on the upper drum here, you can see wear on the upper drum. You see right here? And that's just from contact with the tape. This drum has lots of hours. You can see it. Unfortunately, what's required to fix this camera is a new drum. You can't just replace the upper drum on this. It's an entire unit. It's sealed because they have these little balance bearings in here, right? You see, because this drum, when you're running at 4,500 RPM for Digital 8, they have to really well balance the head drum. So they made it as a non-replaceable part. and it came pre-assembled from the factory. I had to change the head drum on my DCRTRV110. As I was mentioning, I was using it as a recorder for my professional camera. I was also using it as my recorder for when I was replacing, or when I was editing, and it ran up a lot of hours, and I wore the head drum out on it, so I changed that. In fact, I've worn out a couple head drums. I had to change the head drum on my video Walkman, my GVD 800. I had to change the head drum on that. I had to change the head drum on my TRV110, and one of my customers had a GVD 800, and I had to change the head drum on his as well, in the same situation. And for him, what he did is he got a scrap camera, and we pulled the head drum out of a scrap camera to fix it. So that, unfortunately, is what's going to have to happen on this. This one's going to require a new head drum, because this one is just worn down to nothing. Now I got to break the bad news to the guy that owns this, that the head is worn out, and there's really nothing I can do unless he can find another camera of this era that the head can be swapped out of. And it has to be one of the ones like this era, because they changed it. The TRV 240 and 250, etc. That was the one where the tape went in from the bottom. They changed the positioning of the cabling so that they won't line up with the circuit board. So unfortunately, it has to be the same model as this one. As you can see, there's a freeze frame. One head is putting out a little bit of a signal, the other one isn't putting out nothing. And if it was just clogged, we'd be able to clear this off, but it's not. It's just the heads themselves are worn right down. I'll throw the scope on and we'll take a look at the waveform. We'll see signal from one head and not from the other. So I'm just going to connect the probe up here to the RF. I know which one it is. I've got to figure out which one it is. Here's one of these ones. There it is. There's the RF. I'll show you guys the RF. It's not very good. I'm getting a bit of noise on my probe there just from bad ground on it, but there's the output. If I put it into play, you see, you got, yeah, with all that noise, I got to get a new probe. That's the ground. There's the output. You see, see how low that signal is? It's really, really low. Bad probe. All that noise you see is my ground on the probe here. This is a piece of crap Chinese probe. But yeah, the signal is very, very low, as you can see. The alignment looks okay. It doesn't look like it's got an alignment problem. Come on, camera, focus. You can do it. Doesn't like looking at the display, but yeah, the signal is very, very, very low. Let's put a digital 8 tape on. We should see a half of a picture. Because of the way digital 8 works, this is just a freeze frame. But when I get to the actual, performances on this tape in digital 8, we should see like a blocky picture, because one head's putting out signal and the other one's not. If we get anything, we should see something on digital 8, which we do. Right? This is what digital 8 looks like when you try to play digital 8 tape. And it's because half of the information is missing. But unlike analog, on analog there's one rotation per frame. You got the A head, which does the A field, and the B head does the B field, 1800 RPM. On digital 8, the head drum rotates at 4500 RPM. It's actually 5 rotations per frame. With mini DV, it's 10 rotations. So we're missing half of the information, and that's why we're getting that. Because it takes 5 rotations, and only one of the two heads is putting out a signal. It's putting out a very weak signal, but it's putting out enough signal that it's able to decode that one head, but the other one's nothing there. So that's another way to confirm when you've got a digital 8 that's got a worn head, is that it won't play analog. It'll just get like half a picture, half snow, like you saw. When you try to play digital 8, you get all this blockiness. You get an image because it's storing the information in memory, but half the information is missing. So you get that. And of course, this is what happens, like the sound cuts in and out when you try to play a tape with worn heads. This is a digital 8 tape playing. And that's the symptom you get when the heads are worn. So time to remove the tape and throw this one back together. Get a hold of the fellow that owns it and break the bad news that the head is worn out. It's too bad because these were great little cameras. But this is what happens with this equipment as it ages. Parts wear out. There's not a lot you can do. Anyway, that's all for this one. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.